One of the good things about walking as we have been doing is you can see something. You can have a greater appreciation for the area. For example, before we descended to this place, when we were waiting to reassemble our group, if we were to go up maybe 600 meters or so, we would be in the general area where that Seudah Mapseka, that Last Supper, would have taken place. And then from then he would have walked over to where we were in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he was arrested, and now he's brought back over to this area when he will be tried and then sent and eventually go before Pontius Pilate over in the area where we saw the pavement earlier today. So you can have an appreciation for the literal distances because you walked it. Sometimes when you're always on a bus, you're here, but to get to the next part, you have to go all the way around the city because it's one way. And you lose your orientation for where these things are in relationship to one another. I want to begin with the fact that there was a trial here by the Sanhedrin, that Council of 70. And they had a very strict protocol. And when we look at what went on here, they violated their protocol. I think that's very significant. Why would they do that? Because things were not going as they wanted them to. Now, they did not want him to be arrested and such around Passover. They wanted to do things differently, but the opportunity came about, therefore, they arrested him and the process began. He was brought here, and what many will tell you is that they will want to go where many of these people are or where they have been, and you see a dungeon in there. And we know it's a dungeon, a place for holding prisoners, because you can see where they would have been chained to the wall. There are some cutouts where they had drilled into the rock so that chains could be put there. But he wasn't there. That's not what the scripture tells us. Because when Peter came after he was arrested, the sheep, they scattered, but Peter assembled himself with another disciple, and they came to this courtyard. And Yeshua was outside. Now remember, they did not feel threatened by him physically. He wasn't chained so much. We know that it was only when they sent him to the Romans that they chained him. Why? Because they wanted to convey to the Romans he was dangerous. But they didn't see him as dangerous from a physical standpoint. And we know that because if you listen to the account of Catholicism or the high church, the mainline church, they will say he was in prison here. He wasn't. How do we know that for a fact? Well, when Peter came, the other disciple who was with him, he was known by some of the people here. Therefore, they were brought into the courtyard. And we see something. We see that Peter didn't do something. See, if Eduardo was my friend, if he was arrested and he was my Rav, I would come and sit by him. I would want to show my allegiance to him. But Peter didn't do that. Who was he with? The very ones that arrested him. He was warming himself by the fire, and you can understand how it can get cold in Jerusalem, even in the spring. He was there. That's so significant. He was thinking about self and his own preservation rather than his commitment to the Lord. And we all know the story, how he was questioned by some. Certainly you are one of them. You are his disciples. Denied. But let's put that aside for a moment and remember something else. There was a protocol that the Sanhedrin would only meet in light, not in darkness, because they wanted to say everything was transparent. But this time, they did not do that. They met in darkness, a violation, maybe not a huge violation, but nevertheless, they did so. I think from a scriptural standpoint, it says a lot. Secondly, we know something. Not everyone could bear witness in the Sanhedrin. For example, a non-Jew couldn't, a woman couldn't, and a Jewish individual, a man that was not professing to be Torah observant, he could not either. All of those other people, and remember this, they were called false witnesses. Now, it doesn't mean that they may not speak the truth, but it meant that they were seen as a false witness, that is, pasul, we say in Hebrew, rejected from being allowed to testify. But let me ask you a question. What was going on? Jerusalem was full of people. Why was it full of people? Because the Feast of Unleavened Bread was approaching. This was the night before. And what do we know? Well, we know that every Jewish male above the age of 20 was called by the Torah to be here. You know, that says something. If you were looking for kosher witnesses, that is, a witness that was able to testify, you would have the largest supply. People coming from all over to be in Jerusalem for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, one of the 3 festivals that you have to go up to Jerusalem to observe. You would have the largest number of kosher witnesses in one place. And you know what the scripture says? That they looked for people to testify against them. And how many did they find of the kosher witnesses? What's the answer? 0. That says something. When you read that in the proper way, it says nobody who was Torah observant, making the Torah their authority, none of those people would testify against him. That says a value. So what did they do? They violated their protocol. They allowed for false witnesses. That simply means people who rejected the Torah. They allowed men, Jewish men of course, who were not Torah observant to testify. Violation. And what could they say? Only repeat some things. He will destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Obviously, he wasn't talking about the physical temple. He was talking about his body. But nevertheless, if someone says, I'll destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, what is he? Crazy. That doesn't meet the death penalty. And when the trial was not going as the Sanhedrin wanted, what happened? Caiaphas, the high priest, took matters into his own hands. And he did something very unusual. He began to examine Yeshua. And what was the question that he asked? Do you remember? Very important one. He says, are you the son of the most blessed or the most high, depending upon what gospel you're reading? But that term, the most high or the most blessed, what does that mean? The Son of God. It speaks to his divinity. And what did Yeshua say? He just didn't say yes. He said something more. And his answer was so important. What did he say?
You have said it.
What?
You have said it.
Well, before he said that, or maybe after he said that, he quoted scripture, a very important one. If you look at the Talmud, it quotes a scripture in a section called Sanhedrin when it deals with the laws concerning the Messiah. And one of the texts that they have is a quotation from Daniel chapter 7, a very well-known one, you'll know it too, that speaks about Messiah coming on the clouds. And where does he come to? He comes on the clouds. For where? Before the Ancient of Days. Who's the Ancient of Days? God the Father. And what's the purpose for this? The purpose is to inherit. If you read Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, it says that the Son of Man is going to come riding on the clouds. He's going to come before the Ancient of Days, and he's going to inherit. He's going to inherit honor and glory and a kingdom. And that all people, nations, and tribes and languages are going to worship him. So he quotes that. Why? When the high priest says, basically, are you divine? He takes the scripture that proves that Messiah is divine. Why does it prove that he's divine? Because you only worship who? God. So he's saying, by the way, where else does that scripture appear in the New Testament? Where else is it found in the book of the New Testament? In Revelation chapter 1. And there, what we see is John taking several different passages and putting them together. See, when John, and he takes it from its original context and applies it for a reason. See, he speaks about the coming of Messiah, and he says he's coming in the clouds. We read that and we think, okay, he's coming in the clouds. He is going to do that, right? We all agree that. He will do that. But the purpose of that is to not tell us that he's going to come in the clouds. It's to tell us who is coming in the clouds. And that is the divine Son of God. Well, what happens? Peter, who says, these others may deny you, but I will never deny you. And Messiah says, and this is something that's so important about having the right perspective. Here's something that you need to believe. I'm sure you believe the first part. God knows what? Everything. When did God know everything?
Always has.
Always has. There's no surprises. But just because God knows something doesn't mean that he causes it to happen. He knows it because he knows all things. But that doesn't mean that he's the cause of it. Now, why am I saying this? Because he does something. He says to the disciples, you will deny me. But then he says in the garden, pray and watch so that you will not deny me. They have a real decision to make. Just because Messiah knows doesn't mean it's a foregone conclusion. So they didn't. And what do we know? Peter. Not once, not twice, not three. And the reason why that rooster crowed was to confirm not a repentance, but the need for repentance, because it was the time that the rooster crowed that night. That night, it said that Peter denied Yeshua 3 times. Why do you think 3 times? To substantiate. And it was this that Peter felt so bad, because he knew he had failed. What does the scripture say after that happened? What took place? Well, before that, it says when he did that, he looked at him. That's so important that Yeshua looked at him. It confirmed, I know all things. But it also confirms he wasn't in a prison like they teach here. He was outside in the courtyard waiting for that trial, and Peter denied him, just like he said. So we need, and I go back to this common message, is that if we're not praying, if we're not watching, if we're not being prepared for what's going to happen and not realizing what's going to happen, we're not going to be found faithful. I'll conclude with this. We all know the verse of scripture, do we not, where it says, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? Do you realize that question is given with a particular word, a Greek word, ara? Whenever that is used for asking a question, it anticipates a negative response. So what it's saying here is this, that Messiah is not expecting to find great faithfulness when he returns. And that should really alarm us. Most people are not going to remain faithful. What does Messiah say? He says, because of this unrighteousness, he says, the love of many will grow cold. Most people are going to turn away. We're not talking about salvation. We're talking about being found faithful. And we should be praying now, God, give me the mindset, give me discernment, give me the strength that I might be found faithful as long as I'm in this body. If I should be the one that is alive during the end times, then help me to stand faithful. We see in Messiah's first coming, not only was Israel unprepared, but also the disciples. They were unprepared. They were not found faithful. The question is, when Messiah calls the church up, are we going to be found faithful? If we're not praying for it, if we're not serving him properly, if we don't have the right doctrine, we won't be found faithful. So, sobering words. Remember Peter. Peter was so sure. Others will deny you, but not me. Don't be so sure. Be humble and take seriously those words when the Son of Man returns, will he find faith on the earth? Most people will not be found faithful. Well, that's going to conclude our study for today. We're going to walk back to the hotel, and maybe